Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very first episode of our Big Billion Playbook podcast, where we bring you insightful conversations with trailblazers who built billion-dollar companies in a short span of time. I'm Ritesh Chandra, and today we will uncover stories that are not often told. The early days, the pivotal moments, and the lessons learned along the way. Joining us today is none other than Umang Bedi, a dynamic entrepreneur and a thought leader in the tech industry. Umang's journey has been nothing short of spectacular. From his early days in the corporate world to the exciting world of startups. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and get ready for an exciting conversation with Umang. Umang, a brief about yourself. You've had a very illustrious career with several multinationals, including Adobe, as well as with Facebook for a very long time. Would love to hear about what prompted you to transition from your professional journey to an entrepreneurial role.
Ritesh, firstly, a big thank you for having me on the podcast and for being such a wonderful partner through our journey as well. And, on that question, when I look back, I think there were three parts that drove that decision. Part one was, I think I was fortunate where I got these roles to lead some of these companies in the region quite early. Intuit happened at about 28, Adobe happened when I was about 32 and a half, Facebook happened when I was about 37 and a half, 38. And so by the time I hit 40, I was like, what's new? What can I be doing to create and keep learning and keep transforming myself? I think that was one big driver. The second big driver, which I really learned, was in a corporate environment, it's extremely cushy. And you aren't always creating. Most of these roles end up becoming go-to-market kind of roles where your influence on product and people is limited. And so you really want that desire to create. And I think the third reason, if I could be absolutely without any mask or guard on, is I think I had not become a very good person. I think I was a pretty shallow human being. Because you can hide behind the corporate umbrella of a big title, of a big company, everything's cushy. But are you really creating value? Do people value you or the title? Are you having fun creating products that can touch millions of users? And is it really you or the organization? So I think I was fortunate enough that I took that decision the day I turned 40 to resign and move into this world, and found the most wonderful brother in arms and partner in crime in Viru, who was such a humble human being, and today I would say my best friend. We know everything about each other, we complete each other's sentences, and I think that journey of trust over the last, now 6 years has been the most amazing journey. I just wish I had done it when I was 30 and not 40.
No, I think that's very interesting. I think there's a very nice, I think there's an Urdu word for it, if I'm not wrong, called wajood.
Yeah.
It's exactly that, and I think, it resonates fairly well with something that all of us have been through, including myself, and I think it's a great thing. But one of the things that always struck me about entrepreneurship is that how unstructured an entrepreneurial environment is as opposed to a potential multinational. How's your transition been?
So I think the transition was on two fronts. One was a personal transformation journey where I wanted to really change the human being that I had become. So, the first 15 years of one's career was always around chasing a monetary goal or a better job, and that had no value anymore. So I went into this personal transformation journey around health, fitness, focusing on family and work and really creating, which was a lot of fun and very fulfilling, very, very fulfilling. I would say the single most fulfilling thing in the journey. I think the second part of the journey is really around humility, because when Viru and I came together, we came together on the back of a very large term sheet, which didn't happen. The company right in the very beginning, 6 years ago, had I think 2 months of cash. And then it is humbling in the sense because you realize that in those days there were 300-400 people that depended on us. Now it's a lot more, it's in thousands. And so there's this very high degree of sense of responsibility. Viru jokes, and he said this publicly, that he wasn't sure if I would last that out, but when that incident happened, I think I took it more personally than him. And so literally sat on a coach seat, flew around the world, tried to scramble up, or not even raise, the first little bit of capital with people who believed in us. And then it's been a long journey since, right? So I think it's a journey of, one, trusting your gut, looking at data and trusting your gut as well at the same time, being extremely humble, and, always being aware that whether you're successful or you fail at the journey, it's just another day, right? It's a long innings, it's not a 20-20 game.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that brings us to a very interesting part. You had the benefit of having a lovely co-founder with you.
Totally.
Has that helped you out in kind of easing you into entrepreneurship?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so I think, Viru mollycoddled my journey, right? Because the company was set up and all of that part. But I think what we've learned over the last few years is a decision-making process, which is what's best for Verse, for the company. And very often we argue that from different points. Maybe I come top down and he comes bottoms up, but we always meet somewhere in the middle with the right decision on what's best for the company. And I think that journey is also what's very important in having a great co-founder relationship is absolute intellectual honesty. To the degree where from financial, spiritual, physical, mental, whatever state we're in, we know. Today it's almost like Viru and I can complete each other's sentences, or we know what's happening just by looking at each other's face, right? And I think you've got to invest in that relationship. So we literally start our day 4:40 in the morning, 4:30, 5 o'clock. My first message is to him or his to me, and our last messages to each other. So I think that journey really bonds you because you're at war.
Yeah,
you're at war every day.
Absolutely.
Right? And so you have to build immense trust. And it just has culminated into the most beautiful friendship.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I think hats off to both of you for pulling it off, and I think best wishes for a continued journey. A little bit about the company. Verse, obviously, folks who are in the media business know very well about it, but for the benefit of our viewers, if you could just summarize what Verse does, and obviously there are two components to the business. So we'd love to hear in your own words about your two children.
Yep. So Verse is our holding company. The company, in one sentence, really helps creating engaging experiences, hopefully for everyone, every day. Our journey has really been in two domains. The first is on news and local content. And the second one has been on entertainment with short-form video content. So we have two apps. One is DailyHunt, which is India's largest local language news and local content and information services app. The second is Josh, which is India's largest and fastest growing short video app, which serves a very distinct use case. But essentially, when people tend to think of us as a media company, that's the last thing that we are. We're actually a platform and a technology company, which is an aggregator of different forms of content. So if you think about DailyHunt, in one sentence, we aggregate news and local content across 15 different languages, across hundreds of genres, from over 100,000 professional creators, and of course the largest newspapers and TV channels. Josh, on the other hand, has millions of creators because it's a user-generated content platform, and two distinct things, or rather I would say three distinct things that are real moats in the business, which is counterintuitive. We're a discovery marketplace for content, right? So the formats of content on DailyHunt are text, images, video, and shareable viral cards. On Josh, it's all video. But essentially, when you go to any social media platform, you click content and it redirects you to the publisher's site. The other thing that social media platforms do is they personalize basis your social graph in terms of whom you follow and who your friends are. We do none of the above, right? The first thing that we do when we partner with content players is we help them monetize their content from day one. But to do that, we ingest all the content on our platform. And that ingestion comes with moat number one, where we've built one of the deepest AI ML stacks to understand the content and the context. And then moat number two is we've built out a content graph for the user, which is the ability to serve content and over time understand what kind of content does a consumer like to consume, from what genre, across what source, across what publisher, across what format by time of day. And the AI just matches the supply with the demand, right? So that's why I called us a marketplace. I think the third moat really is around just reaching out to these creators. And that requires a lot of on-ground understanding of Bharat across languages, right? For example, a genre that's really popular in Tamil may not be the same genre that's popular in Hindi, right? And so it requires a lot of hyperlocal understanding. And I think the fourth moat that I think we've built is revenue and monetization via our ad tech and commerce platforms. And so, yeah, that's essentially what the business is.
I think, it's the one thing that amazed us about the business is just how deep the competitive moats around this business are. And, while content itself is getting very commoditized at one level, the ability to generate hyperlocal content and the ability to get the right content before the right audience, that's a skill. One of the things that, I know for a fact that DailyHunt was pretty much one of the, and Josh, of course, was one of the pioneers in using AI and machine learning. And I think that, obviously it's become common parlance now, it's the flavor of the season. But a little bit about how you built up the technology stack and, how you're using that to scale up.
Yeah, I'll maybe illustrate this with a very simple example rather than a lot of English, right, which can be very difficult to understand. So let's say there's a piece of content that pops in, okay? It could be a video, which is an unboxing of a phone or two phones and making a comparison, right? Let's say there's a creator who's doing that. And there could be another piece of content which is talking about Virat Kohli's form after his marriage to Anushka Sharma, right? I'm just giving that as an example. Now, what we first do is run machine learning models, which start with very basic collaborative filtering, which is just on keywords, down to neural networks. And neural networks are of various kinds. We run deep CNN models to basically understand your content kya hai, what is it, what is it saying?
Right.
And so we understand within the Virat Kohli and the Anushka example that, hey, it's on cricket, it's on a cricketer, but there's also this entertainment angle of Bollywood. So is it purely cricket? Is it purely Bollywood? No, it's somewhere in the middle, right? Whereas the other one is fairly more linear in terms of the unboxing video. That's technology within technology, it's gadgets within gadgets, it's mobile within mobile, it's maybe comparing to mid-end Android phones, and there's an opinion on which is the better one, right? So what the machine does is generate hundreds and thousands of tags. And we've been doing this over the last 8 years, over now 1 billion pieces of content in 15 languages and formats, right? So the richness of the pool of data that you're training the model on is very large. So what we get out of this is a very intricate knowledge of the content. Now, on the other side, when a new user comes in, we don't even ask him to sign in. We just ask him or her to select a language or multiple languages. We throw in a feed with different genres of content. And then when you're looking into DailyHunt, we're kind of looking back at you, but in an anonymous fashion.
Got it.
So we don't know who your friends are, who your family is. We're not asking you for your personal details, your love life. We're just observing how you scroll, where you pause, where you click, how you spend time, what you like, comment on, share. And that's where we get the AI then is nothing but a matching of the demand signals that we're getting from the audience to the to the supply signals of the velocity of content that we have. And that's how we curate this over time. And to give you a context now, we have a very seasoned AI/ML lab in the US. We have about 10 PhDs who are just working on algorithms to drive better engagement and time spent.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's how the teams kind of evolved over time.
Umang, you referred to the opportunity in Bharat. And I think one of the, we keep hearing this tagline, content is king. Could you just touch about how you're sourcing this content? Because, as in a country, as you rightly alluded, the country as broad and vast as India, you need to have the right content. How do you filter it? How do you put it up on the platform?
So it's a vast domain, but at the end of the day, content is king when you can monetize it.
Yeah, I second that.
And I think what we've cracked as a code, as I would believe, is we're the only platform that's cracked a 4-prong code of content acquisition and user growth, user engagement, user monetization, and profitability. But most of the time, platforms, or rather content creators, have struggled with monetizing their content, right? And that's really hard to do. Whether you're an Indian company, Chinese, or whoever, they've all struggled with monetization in this region. Now, it starts off with audience. You have to know whom you're serving. We are serving what we call the belly of India, or Bharat, right? This is educated India, this is aspiring India, this is the growing middle class of India that likes to consume content in different genres, but in their local language, right? Like when we go home, maybe you speak in Punjabi or Hindi
absolutely.
or your local tongue, right?
Absolutely.
So fine, we'll all watch Oppenheimer, which I did. But at the end of the day, if I want to chill, I want to watch a Bollywood movie,
absolutely.
boss, right? Or I want to watch a Tollywood or a Collywood movie if I'm from that region. And so we distinctly believe that in the news side, right? For instance, yes, you get television news. Yes, you get newspapers that give you content. We aggregate content from all of them. But people are interested in knowing कि मेरे मोहल्ले में क्या हो रहा है, मेरे jurisdiction में क्या हो रहा है. And so what we've deployed is an engine which has over 100,000 local content creators who are independent journalists, bloggers, who report or give us informational content on what's happening around the region. To do that, we've given them tools. We've given them a mobile journalist toolkit where they can create video in any format, add supers, overlays, etc., and we ingest that content, right? Then we have the engine that's kind of trying to verify with is this unique? Is this from a reputable source? Did this really happen? So there are standards that we put into play to fact check that. Then the other thing that we do, which is very interesting, is social media is often accused of creating bubbles. Yeah. I'll serve you more and more and more of what you want to consume.
Echo chambers.
Echo chambers, right? And so if you notice on the platform, when there is a breaking piece of content, we aggregate from both left-wing and right-wing media, right? So if let's take an example of a piece of content. Let's say there's a right-wing media that says demonetization was the best thing for India. And there's a left-wing media that disagreed, right? Now, if I'm a right-wing consumer, I'm going to just see that it's the best thing for India by getting that kind of content. But what we do is on high velocity, high important items, we show you both sides of the story. So below that piece of content, you'll see diverse perspectives from other sources, right? And that helps individuals, be more informed and make their own decisions. So we avoid the echo chamber. So one is having the depth on the ground to aggregate from any digital source. Right. Two is, even if it's in a written format or a print format, we have OCR, character recognition technology, that can convert that into digital. Three is being absolutely neutral, dead center, right? And so that's what we do around the content story. I'll give you a fun example. In 2018, early on, when Viru and I came together, we did a few things on the platform, we improved the amount of content, and we said, now we need to monetize, right? But no one would believe that our audience is real. So we ran a poll. The poll was called Daily Hunt Trust of the Nation. It was run on December 1st, 2018 to December 12th, 2018. December 13th, 14th, and 15th, and this poll was who will come into power in the 2019 elections, right? And there were very hard-hitting, straight political questions. Right. On December 13th, 14th, and 15th, I distinctly remember BJP lost Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, and Madhya Pradesh, 3 states. On December 16th, and by the way, we paid AC Nielsen to run this poll off their servers in the US and serve it via a widget in 15 different languages on the app. AC Nielsen went to market with us with a joint press release, and we held a press conference, and this is on YouTube so you can see it, wherein we announced the results, and they basically said 3 things. One, they said this is the largest poll in the history of mankind. Wow. 6 million unique responses. Now, my job was done. That we have an audience, right? But 70% or 69% of the user base said Modi will come into power. And interestingly, we got that traffic from over, I think, 18,000 or 19,000 of the 21,000 zip codes in the country, right? Yeah. And it was kind of interesting wherein when we announced it, the Press Trust of India boycotted us. A lot of, I was the AC Nielsen country head, and I on stage at the Oberoi in Delhi were kind of rogered by journalists saying this seems to be propaganda, right, and it speak for the government. So it did have that ugly nature. They banned the press release, and of course the next morning it came out with one long quote from the other side, but job done. Yeah. The fun fact was in 2019 when Prime Minister Modi got re-elected, we had called the number to the T at some 69 point whatever. And so what that tells you is you have the pulse of Bharat, right? Bharat votes very differently when it comes to state and national politics, right? And so I think that example was an interesting learning for us. It was a little bit of what we call reinforcement learning in the world of AI, that, hey, we have a real audience with real people who are educated and they can read, right? And they have an opinion.
And any plans of doing the similar thing this time around?
Well, we don't reveal plans in the future. The elections are a little way off. I think another 11 months to go. So let's see. I think for us, elections are our IPL, right? Like that's where we see a huge surge in interest and traffic.
One more thing that we spoke about was monetization, and I think as investors, one of the key things that we look for in engagement models is the ability to monetize. Now there are 2 elephants in the room, which are Google and Facebook, who are kind of dominating that business. Now, how does Verse find its spot in the sun?
In one sentence, Verse is the ByteDance of India. The difference is ByteDance largely operates in China or makes most of its revenue from there, where Google and Facebook don't operate, right? We have to operate in this country. And what happens is that the ad ecosystem is dominated by the duopoly of Google and Facebook, right? For most publishers who haven't developed their own ad tech platform, the biggest challenge is that they're dependent on networks. By the way, the 2 largest networks are Google and Facebook, right? And so what happens is they determine the value of your audience, right? And effectively, the rate at which they pay you in the world of advertising, it's called CPMs. It's just jargon. But for every 1,000 times you show an impression of an ad, there's a unit rate that is paid, right? Imagine if Facebook or Google makes, let's say, X dollars of CPM in India. Let's say that number is 2, 3, 4, whatever that number is. What they pay you is a fraction of that, right? What that tells you is if you are dependent on networks to monetize, you will never build a profitable business, right? Now that means 2 things. You either move to a subscription model, but then you need to have very high quality content, very differentiated content to charge consumers for it, right? Or you build your own end-to-end advertising technology stack. Right. So that's what we did. We built our own ad tech stack. It's inspired by the best ad tech stacks in the platform. It runs on an auction model. And then you work with large advertisers, agencies, but a big focus for us was working with small and medium businesses as well, right? Who may not be digitally savvy, who still want to reach a tier 2, tier 3 audience, though today it's interesting, 45% of the user base on DailyHunt has chosen English as a primary or a dual language, right? And in order to better serve that consumer, we actually evolved the product. And I would now safely say, in an unbiased manner, that it's probably the most beautiful news product I've seen. It's a web-based stories product where It's very visually engaging. It's full screen. You can go deeper into a story just by a few taps, or you could just swipe up if you don't want to go deep and go to the next one. It's a lot of richness of content. A lot of it is now being created using generative AI as well. And if there's an interest on any piece of content to go into the depths, we've linked it to the long format. Now, whether that's a long format video or a deep read in terms of a deeper article, you can switch there and come back. And so really serving this audience with newer experiences is what keeps engagement up, driving more real estate for advertisers in a full screen format, helps monetization. And then, of course, building the ad tech is very, very critical. And I think that's the journey.
I think one of the key standouts for us on this, on Verse has been the ability to monetize and how successfully they've done that. And I think you've created a monetization platform where several other folks have just fallen by the wayside. So, that's something that's really interesting. Just coming back to this issue of hyperlocal, if you look at other platforms, they've largely been, creating content for, which is, if I dare say, is more acceptable to the metro audience in India. And you've chosen to go exactly the other route of being extremely hyperlocal about the news as well as content. What was the thought process behind that, and how, in your opinion, how's that worked out for you?
So, there are many Indias within India, right? In terms of, and I'll give you a very interesting story. We've all flown Indigo Airlines, and I remember they were the first airline that when the air hostess announced the leading lady, when she was talking, she would say, "Is flight ke karamchari Hindi, Angrezi, Tamil, Telugu bol sakte hain." So I went up to her once on a long Delhi-Bangalore flight, 2.5 hours. They had finished their service in about an hour. And those were the days when they were selling food and beverage. And then another trolley would go out for selling gifts.
Right, that's correct.
So I went and asked her after the gift service was done that, why do you say these languages? I've never heard an airline say this, right? So she said there's an inherent bias in that question, which I'm relaying to you, Ritesh. There's an inherent bias in that question. Yeah. And so I asked her, I said, what do you mean? So she said, because of our colonial past, and this was a young kid who I think was very evolved in her thinking.
Absolutely.
So she said 3 things. She said, 1, because of our colonial past, you tend to believe that people who speak English are better off and have a higher socioeconomic strata. 2, she said, that's so untrue because India is really like the United States of Europe. Every time you pass a country in Europe, the language changes. What unites it is the euro. Similar thing with us, the language changes. What unites us is the rupee. And then she said the third is not your bias again to think that I'm saying this for people to feel comfortable. I'm saying this for economic reasons. And it was surprising. She said on metro flights, about 30% of the sales happen in local language.
Wow.
But if it's a non-metro to a non-metro, that's as high as 60%. And she said, hey, all of you corporate travelers would get one black coffee and almonds. The guy from Gujarat, if he liked the choda or the local chips, would take 5 boxes home. Right? Then it goes back to the insight that Nelson Mandela shared, that when you speak to a man in a language that he understands, it goes to his head. But when you speak to him in his language, it goes to his heart, right? Absolutely. And so I think that's the insight. So our strategy was built on that insight, wherein if you look at Bharat or you look at India, 1.4 billion people, 120 million people in the top 10 metros, right? Mota, I'm just saying, giving the maths. There are another 300 million, 250 to 300 million who live in urban India in 4,000 towns, right? And that's the growing middle class, even within tier 1 metros and tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns. And so we said, hey, let's go and focus on that audience. Yeah. And it's a differentiated audience. And so we started with local languages. Now, interestingly, literacy has become so rampant, it's improved so much, right? That English consumption on the app, as I said, 40 to 45% of our users have now selected English as a language or, their dual languages, right? Like I have English and Hindi enabled on my DailyHunt app. And so I think that's the interesting insight, that you decide who you want to serve and then serve them with good experiences. So we always stayed away from Chinese growth hack models of racy, raunchy content, and because then you're not really attracting a monetizable user base, right? And so I think that's what what most people forget is to come on to Daily Hunt, because about 65% of the content is still text, you have to be able to read.
Right.
So you automatically are serving a monetizable audience. Now it's about your ability to monetize beyond that. But that's how we think about that was the thesis.
Excellent. I know. I think clearly. I hope you made an offer to that air hostess to join.
I did send an email to Aditya,
okay.
Who was the CEO in those
Right.
days, saying, Aditya, there's a very evolved
Yeah.
lady that I met on the plane, and she was very insightful. But I did send an email.
Excellent.
I didn't hire her. Aditya is a dear friend.
Yeah, of course. Umang, if you can just talk about the macro. I mean, obviously there has been a lot of talk about the so-called funding winter, etc., and what's happened. And I think there is, as business models are evolving, folks are now obviously looking at businesses with a fairly closer lens and going deep into them. How in your mind do you balance growth and profitability in a business like yours?
So I think the first thing that I would say about our ecosystem is, I have friends, very dear friends, who run traditional businesses, and they were always wondering, like, what is this valuation race and why are people going so crazy over it? I think the writing's on the wall that businesses in the digital space need to get real. Yeah. For them to get real, they need to start generating revenue, profitability, and free cash flow. Correct. Right? So it's no longer EBITDA, but it's FCF that's discussed, right? So I think for us, we always had a core business that hit profitability about 18 months ago. And the Daily Hunt business has now started to grow. It's generating about 15% EBITDA, translating into FCF. But Josh is still getting there, right? Because Josh is just 2 years old. Yeah. So hopefully in the next 18 months, everything breaks EBITDA positive as a company. But I think in today's world, what I've realized is you have to be real. Vanity metrics are not going to be digestible by anyone. So we would always index on profitable growth versus one of the two, right? I think profitability is key. I think our ethos early on was, when we started, we had a very small revenue base, but it was, we have to monetize on day one. Because we realized that we're living in India, the story around, hey, I just have users and revenue will follow 6 years later. We're not in the valley. It's a very different.
No, even in the valley, I think that thing about having so many eyeballs, etc., is completely out of the window.
It's completely out of the window, right?
So people want to see real cash come through.
So that was a little bit of a middle class mentality that Viru and I had from day one. That even if it's small, we'll start to monetize a little bit what we have, and then we'll improvise over time. So I think it's time to get real. It's time to really focus on profitability. And we've done a lot to take the company in that direction. Of course, the core is now pretty well in generating cash quite nicely. And hopefully Josh gets there very, very quickly. But I think that's the guidance I would give everyone. It's real. And as an ecosystem, we have to get real.
Yeah, and I think one of the good things that at least we're seeing Umang is that across the board, even in this environment, investors are willing to back businesses with solid business models. And I think there's a clear stratification that we are seeing amongst the haves and the have-nots. And I think people who are focused on profitability are clearly in the haves category. So that's something really good to hear. Just in terms of how you see the future of Verse going forward, do you look at yourself as a disruptor in the ecosystem, or are you think that you're creating a category itself?
I think about determination and resilience actually first. As a, through this journey of 5-6 years, we've been hit by many headwinds, right? And a lot of companies and a lot of entrepreneurs may have succeeded better than us through those headwinds, but I know a lot wouldn't have survived. So I think we are survivors and fighters and are resilient in that space. I think we are large in our spaces. There is a huge opportunity to disrupt, else we will be disrupted. Right. For instance, if we don't start innovating around content and content formats, I think the definition of news has changed. The definition of how people consume news has changed. Right. People are consuming news now. I asked a 19-year-old kid the other day, when you first heard about the outrage in Manipur, where did you read it or hear about it? And he said social media, right? And so you got to get more social friendly formats, which is why espresso came into being. So I think we are very paranoid as a company. I don't think I wouldn't call ourselves a classic disruptor. We are paranoid folks that are constantly trying new things, and we fail at a few, and we fail fast. We don't run down a path too deeply unless we see early signs of success. But we are constantly trying to innovate and be ahead of the curve. I think in terms of future, the whole space is going to get disrupted. Generative AI on content creation is going to disrupt everything, right? We know that, we see it coming, we're already using it for a large or a pretty high degree percentage of our espresso content within Daily Hunt. What I think is going to happen is a lot of print businesses are going to try and move behind the paywall. They're going to try and transform their newsrooms. I think TV and print traditional is going to have to adopt a lot of digital. So I think that line is going to blur. And I think we as a digital native company now just have to stress that much harder on continuously innovating on new engaging formats of content, right? I mean, today it was news, then it was short video, who knows what it will be. I don't think I have an answer, but unless we have our ear to the ground, understand the consumer pulse, and are constantly paranoid that we will be disrupted, right? Yeah. I think Bezos said it best. He said, Amazon will be disrupted. I just hope it's not in my lifetime, right? So it's
no,
so
I think it's you've got to keep running to stand still.
Totally.
So, Umang, a little bit about, for our viewers, a little bit about yourself. I'm going to ask you a few personal questions.
Sure.
So, one of the things I know, and I share with you is your passion for fitness, and I know you're a regular at the gym, wherever you are. What started that?
So I was 144 kilos once.
Holy moly!
Yeah, you couldn't recognize me. And then I went down to 72. I'm now at about 81, 82. I'm fine. I'm okay. But I didn't like the person I'd become in the mirror, and so I decided to change everything about that. The first 140 to 125 was keto. The next was running every day, 16 kilometers a day till 100. And then I just picked up weight training and HIIT. So for me, that's my go-to workout. I absolutely love it. And sleep's very important. We all have, said I only slept 3 hours and 4 hours. It's such a lot of BS because contrary to popular belief, you feed your muscle when you eat, you burn your muscle when you work out, and you grow your muscle when you sleep. Right? And so whatever your goal is, if you are sleeping well, you're going to be healthier and fitter.
I have to ask you, when somebody who gets up at 4:45 a.m., when is it that you catch your sleep?
So fun fact, I'm the most boring man on planet Earth. I met my wife in kindergarten, or rather, before, our parents were friends before we were born. We've been best friends throughout and married for God knows how many years now, but it's just been a one-woman man from that story. And also very boring. My wife calls me an old man because I go to sleep by 9. I'm in bed by 8:45, 9 every day. Right. Or I try to, at least when I'm not traveling.
That's amazing. Favorite holiday destination?
I enjoy parts of Southeast Asia, and I love parts of Europe. There's no one favorite.
So the beaches or the mountains?
Beaches, I think.
Beaches?
Yeah.
Beaches is what it is to be.
On the only exception to the beaches is I love going to Nepal to trek. We went up to base camp and hopefully a lot more. So I'm trying to make it an annual trek. So that's the only exception.
How do you learn best? What is your learning format and reading data absorption format?
I'm very visual. So I like to see stuff. Videos are great. Visual content is great.
A slightly philosophical one. What does the word success mean to you?
I really think that success is overrated. To me, it's how do you move from success to significance, which is more important. And what that means is, what's the legacy you're leaving behind? Have you touched people the right way? Do people remember you for good or for some impact that you created? That to me is a true measure of one's achievements.
Comfort food?
Anything that's unhealthy, I think. But I think comfort food would be dal chawal and aloo ki sabzi.
That's soul food.
Soul food, total soul food. Or a paratha.
Right. And lastly, Umang, just to cap it off, if I was to ask your team, just pick 3 words to describe Umang, what would the 3 words be in your view?
I think they would say passionate.
Right.
I think they would say driven. And I hope they would say compassionate, but that's a hope.
Good. Umang, thanks a ton for your time. It's been really great chatting with you.
Likewise, Ritesh.
And pleasure, and wish you
Thank
all
you
the
very
very
much.
best.
Thank you
Take
very
care.
much.
Thank you.